If you find your Social Security number on any of the 1,000 risky websites, if they find it, it's free for card members. Sign up online, discover.com/free alerts. Limitations apply. Doug Gottlieb, Mark Schlereth, John Middlecoff, where Colin was right, wrong. Great show today. So, there's the old saying, don't bite the hand that feeds you, right? Understand who has helped you in life and don't turn on them. James Harden, who's been the beneficiary of so many baskets and points. James Harden essentially travels on all his shots. Everybody in the league's complaining about it. Every player's complaining about it. The officials have had a hard time officiating it. It's been the talk of the NBA season the last 2 years. James Harden takes a step back that many people consider to be a traveling, and they don't call it. And it's allowed James Harden to take a massive leap in production. Yet Harden yesterday was complaining about the very people who have been feeding him for years and allowing borderline calls, the refs. Here it is.
I just want a fair chance, man. Call the game how it's supposed to be called, and that's it. And I'll live with the results. Like, that can change the entire series. Just call the game how it's supposed to be called, and we'll live with the results.
Well, the knock, of course, is everybody has been claiming that James Harden, they wish the game would be called correctly, which is traveling for his step back. So he has benefited greatly from that call. Magic Johnson used to palm the ball and, benefited greatly from that. They never called it. Michael Jordan had a couple of back-to-the-basket moves where he moved his pivot foot and looked like he traveled, and they let him have it. They often do this. If a star creates kind of a new step, a new move, they allow it. But Chris Broussard made a point about James Harden complaining.
First of all, the one player that should not be complaining about getting calls or not getting calls is James Harden. He gets more calls than any player. That's well documented.
Now, just to show you how staggering it is, here's free throw attempts in the last 5 years combined. Harden's number 1, Westbrook is 2. He has almost 1,000 more free throws. And if you look at who's 2 and 3, Westbrook and DeMar DeRozan, those are highly athletic players who are simply hard to defend because of their athletic ability. You're constantly chasing them. Harden is not that level of athlete. So what it tells you is officials are calling fouls against Harden and his step-back moves, not because he's just more athletic, not because because they have allowed his step-back move. Harden is on a historic pace in free throws. Here's the 3 players that have led the NBA in free throw attempts in 5 straight years. And here's what's ironic. Harden, Karl Malone, and Wilt. And during each of the 5-year stretches in which they have led the NBA in free throw attempts, 15 years, no titles. Because in Harden's case, in Karl Malone's case, and in Wilt's case, early with the Sixers, if you think you're going to win the NBA championship at the free throw line, you are not, mailman. Let me deliver some news to you. You're not winning titles that way. Referees in hockey, basketball, and football do not want to decide championships. In hockey, football, and basketball, I've seen it for 40 years. They swallow whistles. Ask the Saints. Don't blame the officials if you don't know that going in. And I really, like Chris Broussard said earlier, I think the Rockets came into this series analytically thinking, we got to get to the free throw line. That's a you problem. The refs are not going to allow this series to be decided at the free throw line. By the way, the NBA today came out with their 2-minute report. So the NBA comes out, and by the way, the NBA has never been afraid to rip its own officials. In fact, I've complained the 2-minute report is not a great look for your league. They came out with their 2-minute report. They looked over it, and based on the rules, James Harden draws Draymond Green into the air during his shot attempt. Put this up full screen. And Green jumps in front of Harden and would have missed him if Harden hadn't extended his legs. That's not an opinion. That is how the NBA, after watching that tape 100 times, that's how they call it. So, Houston, your opinion, that is contact created by Harden. And the NBA came out today in their 2-minute report an hour ago and said, yeah, we would have called that on Harden over Draymond Green. And to Doug Gottlieb's point, if you jump straight up, I have to give you a place to land. But if you are jumping and extending your legs, well, where's your landing radius? What am I supposed to do as an official? The defensive player doesn't have any rights. The defensive player doesn't have any territory. So it's almost like if you're going to manipulate your landing area, it's almost like the IRS. If I was a company and I was manipulating my taxes, the IRS could say, all right, we want some of this territory back. We're going to audit you with a finer tooth comb than we audit other similar companies because we feel you're trying to manipulate us, the IRS. And the IRS says, I don't have to audit everybody similarly. If we think you are manipulating our tax system, we will audit you with more ferocity, with more volume, with more agents. And the NBA is saying, all right, if you're trying to manipulate us, and by the way, James Harden is, this last year, James Harden added a dimension to his game. The fall down. Greg, you watch almost every Rockets game. He falls 5 times a game. That's not because his equilibrium got worse in the last 12 months. He is trying to add a layer of manipulation to his game. And the refs are like, okay. And this whole year, they've struggled with officiating. And there's been a lot of complaints. But then you get to the playoffs, and all the young officials are done, and now it's veteran NBA officials. And they're not going to let him manipulate them like young officials do. So here was the great response from Draymond Green to Harden complaining about this call on the refs.
I've been fouled by James on a James three-pointer before. I ain't trying to hear that. Nah, I ain't going with that one. I'm straight.
Yeah, he's not going to go with that one. So the NBA came out with their 2-minute report today, and they said Harden initiated the contact. So, and I said this earlier, it gets cold every year in the winter. It's my responsibility to buy a coat. I don't blame the weather. And every year in the playoffs, by the second round, officials allow more contact. That is not the officials' fault. You have to be aware of that as an organization. And I think Chris Broussard brought up an interesting point. The Rockets came into the series thinking they were going to win this thing at the free throw line. They thought we're going to manipulate this, and I don't think it worked. Running a small business is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. It takes time and money, and you want all your time and money growing your business. Anybody listening out there that has a business, there's probably things you're an expertise at, like your business. But are you an expert in tax law, LLCs, incorporations, contract reviews? Are you an expert in lease agreements? You're probably an expert in whatever business, the wine business, landscaping. This is what LegalZoom.com does. Vetted independent attorneys, tax pros available in all 50 states. They have a business legal plan. Their job, they're not a law firm. It's not hourly rates. It's not how they roll. Time and money, they make it work for you. Go to LegalZoom.com, enter Colin, C-O-L-I-N at checkout.